Have you noticed that nowadays, it seems like everyone lives with the obligation to always be available? Messages arrive, and you have to respond. Requests are made, and you have to accept them. Calls ring, and you rush to answer. It's as if there's no more room to say no, to retreat, or simply to be at peace. But there's one catch. This constant availability isn't a sign of strength, but rather of weakness. It's a trap that drains your energy, steals your freedom, and makes you believe you're important when, in fact, you're being used. And here's the powerful promise that will keep you hooked until the end of this video. When you understand the illusion of constant availability and change how you offer your time and attention, everything changes. People start to see you differently. Respect increases, your voice gains weight, and your presence becomes valued. It's no exaggeration. Ceasing to be constantly accessible can completely transform your life, in your relationships, at work, and even in the way you see yourself. Alan Watts once said that rushing to meet external demands is like losing yourself in a void, because deep down, your energy only has value when you know how to use it consciously. And that's exactly what we'll unravel here. How this illusion of availability traps you, how you can break free, and most importantly, why your life will never be the same after you make this decision. Now it's clear. Understanding this truth has already begun to change the way you view your time and energy. This knowledge empowers you because you will no longer accept living as someone always available and disposable. You've already experienced firsthand how this opens space for respect, freedom, and appreciation. That's precisely why it makes sense to support this video by liking and subscribing to the channel. Just as this message transformed you, it can also transform others who need to hear it now. Understand something. Have you ever noticed how we rarely stop to appreciate silence? It seems like the whole world is so fast-paced, with notifications beeping every second, that silence has become almost a luxury. But it's precisely in this pause that you begin to discover how much your energy carries. When you stop being constantly available, when you choose to step back a little, something curious happens. People start paying more attention to what you say, what you do, and even your absence. It's as if your presence begins to carry a meaning that was previously hidden by excessive access. And this is the point that Alan Watts brings brilliantly, because he shows that it's not excessive movement that brings clarity, but rather the space you create between one action and another. Now think about it. How many times have you responded to messages on autopilot just because you didn't want to seem rude, or because you thought the person would be offended? And in the end, you didn't even remember the conversation, because it was just another response thrown in to fulfill an obligation. This doesn't create connection. It doesn't generate value. On the contrary, it wears you down and starts to feel like you're always chasing other people's demands. This is where the power of silence and space comes in. When you don't rush to respond immediately, when you let things breathe, you're showing that your attention isn't cheap, that it's not available at any time like a product on the shelf. You're saying, without needing to say anything, that your energy is valuable. And look how interesting. This simple gesture changes the way others treat you. Many people mistake silence for weakness or even disinterest, but the truth is that silence, when it comes from a conscious choice, is one of the most powerful forms of communication. It creates anticipation. It gives the other person space to reflect. It makes what you say later carry much more weight. It's like in a song. It's not just the notes that matter, but also the pauses between them. Without these pauses, the melody becomes noise. With them, each sound gains meaning. The same thing happens in life. When you give space, when you allow silence, what you do next becomes much more meaningful. And here's a point you may never have stopped to consider. Being silent is also a way of respecting yourself. It's giving your thoughts permission to organize themselves so you don't get sucked into this rush where everyone seems to be competing to see who responds fastest, who gets everything done first. It's in silence that you can hear what truly matters, that you realize what's a priority and what's just noise. And you can be sure, when you start valuing these moments, even your decisions become more accurate because they don't come from haste but from clarity. I want to challenge you now. Do you remember a time when you were silent, in no rush to respond, and realized that it completely changed the course of a situation? It could be in a conversation with someone important, a family argument, or even at work. Comment below with the word clarity, because I want to know if you've ever had this experience of feeling that silence spoke louder than any immediate response. This comment, besides highlighting your experience, will help others reflect on this and realize they're not alone in this process. The most fascinating thing is that when you start applying this, the world around you reacts. People who were used to having you always ready, always running, start to feel annoyed at first. Some may even complain, "You've changed, you're not the same anymore." And it's true, you have, because now you're choosing quality over quantity, you're choosing to preserve your energy instead of giving it away. But along with this annoyance comes something new: respect. Respect for your time, your presence, and even your silence. Little by little, others learn that they can't simply invade your peace, and this transforms the way they see you. Alan Watts said that life isn't about filling every space with noise, but about learning to dance with the emptiness. This idea may seem strange at first, because we've been conditioned to believe that being always busy and always available is a sign of importance. But the more you practice silence, the more you realize that true power lies precisely in not letting yourself be dragged along by this false urgency that dominates so many people. And curiously, it's when you step back a little, when you create these spaces, that you begin to be remembered differently. Your presence ceases to be banal and becomes rare, and therefore much more valuable. And this is where I want you to pay attention. Everything we've been talking about so far is paving the way for something even more impactful. Because when you understand the power of silence and space, you begin to notice a pattern that goes far beyond conversations or everyday life. There's an even deeper principle that explains why, when you become less available, your value skyrockets. And it's precisely this principle that will make you see the next point with new eyes. Now think with me. Why is it that when something is rare, it automatically gains more value? Isn't it the same with precious stones, works of art, or even certain moments in life that seem unique? This same logic applies to you. When you're always available, people start to take your presence for granted. But when you start to manage your time and choose where you put your energy, everything changes. You stop being that always there person and become someone whose presence is noticed, awaited, and respected. This is where the central point comes in. Scarcity creates value. Notice how this works in your daily life. You know that message you don't respond to right away, or that call you decide to answer only after a while. This space creates something powerful: expectation. And expectation generates respect. People stop to think, am I overreacting? Is what I asked really important? Am I valuing this person enough? It's in this gap that a shift in perception emerges. The other person begins to see that your attention isn't infinite and therefore needs to be treated with more care. And don't think this is about playing games or manipulating others. It's not like that at all. It's about learning to set boundaries, about showing that your time and energy matter. Because when you offer yourself without filter, when you respond immediately, you convey, even unintentionally, the message that your value is low. Now, when you learn to preserve yourself, to prioritize what truly deserves your attention, you show the world that not just anything will steal your energy. And this naturally makes people respect you more. A simple example: think of someone you greatly admire, a leader, a wise friend, or even a public figure. These people aren't always available. You can't call them at any time, nor can you get immediate responses. And precisely for this reason, when they speak or appear, your attention is undivided, because there's a value associated with their presence. Now compare that to someone who responds in seconds, who never says no, and who's always trying to please. Who is more valued in the end? The answer is obvious, and here comes something Alan Watts emphasized. Emptiness gives meaning to what is full. It's absence that gives presence weight. It's the silence between words that gives strength to speech. Likewise, it's your strategic absence that gives value to your presence. This doesn't mean isolating yourself from everyone or disappearing from the map, but rather learning to create scarcity intelligently, knowing when to show up, when to speak, when to give. This way, every time you step into the spotlight, the impact is greater. I want to suggest a quick thought. Comment below on the word value. If you've ever noticed that when you weren't as available to someone, they started seeking you out, more, valuing you more, missing you more, this comment will serve to reinforce that this experience isn't just yours, but that of many who are starting to position themselves differently. And this helps others who are watching understand that this path makes sense. Now keep this in mind. When you learn that scarcity creates value, you take a giant step toward changing the way the world sees you. But there's something even deeper behind this, something that directly impacts the expectations others place on you, and how these expectations end up shaping or imprisoning your life. And that's precisely what we'll delve into next. Have you ever noticed how people create unrealistic expectations when you're always available? It's as if your life revolves around their needs. They get used to calling at all hours, texting late at night, asking for last-minute favors, and expect you to drop everything to get things done. And you know what's worse? You often do this, believing you're being generous, thoughtful, or even indispensable. But deep down, you're harboring a dangerous illusion that your energy is infinite and that your role is to provide for others without limit. This cycle is exhausting because the more you meet their demands, the more people project an impossible standard onto you. They create the expectation that you'll always be there, ready to save, help, listen, and solve problems. But there comes a time when you can't take it anymore, and when you finally say no, or simply take a long time to respond, that's it. You're seen as cold, distant, even selfish. In other words, you become a prisoner of other people's expectations. And the thing is, you allowed this to happen by not setting boundaries beforehand. Now look how interesting. When you start to withdraw a little, when you make it clear that you can't always be available, you break this cycle. You teach, in practice, that each person needs to take responsibility for themselves. It's like a parent who stops solving everything for their child and lets them learn to walk alone. At first, it may be uncomfortable, it may seem harsh, but in the end, the result is growth. The person learns to manage, to not depend so much, and you regain your freedom. Alan Watts talked about this a lot. Life is suffocated when we live trying to live up to the expectations others project. Because these expectations are endless, they will always increase. The more you give, the more they demand. And then you never live your own life, only the life others have designed for you. It's like being in an invisible prison where the bars are made of obligations you yourself have accepted. Think about how many times you felt exhausted trying to please everyone. How many times have you found yourself saying yes when deep down you wanted to say no? Has this ever happened to you? Comment here. Freedom, because it symbolizes exactly what you begin to achieve when you understand this point. Freedom from other people's expectations. Your comment will show that you've been there too and are ready to turn the page. And there's something powerful about this. When you set boundaries, you not only protect yourself, but you also become respected. Believe me, no one respects someone who says yes to everything. People only understand the value of your energy when they realize they can't abuse it. This change can be uncomfortable at first, because not everyone will accept it easily. Some will complain, others will try to manipulate you into returning to your old pattern. But when they realize you won't give in, that you now live on your own terms, the relationship changes. You're no longer seen as an extension of others and are recognized as someone authentic, with a will of your own. And that's exactly where the next point comes in, because when you free yourself from these suffocating expectations, you make room for something much greater, the chance to live authentically, without bowing to other people's agendas. And that's the direction we're going to move in now. You know, when you finally realize you were living more for others than for yourself? It's a shock. You look back and realize that so many of your choices were influenced by other people's expectations, the jobs they took for you, the commitments you never wanted, even the conversations you had just to avoid seeming rude. That's the burden of constant availability. But the moment you start to break that, something new and powerful emerges, the freedom to be authentic. And this is where the turning point lies. Not being constantly available isn't selfish, it's redemption. It's saying to yourself, my life is not for sale. Because when you say yes to everything, you're selling your time for free. You're giving your energy away without any filter. Now, when you decide to only invest your attention in what truly matters, you're freeing yourself. It's as if, for the first time, you're taking the wheel of your own life. Alan Watts spoke about this very clearly. Living authentically means refusing to be a prisoner of external demands. And let's be honest, how many times have you felt suffocated by trying to fit into molds that were never yours? How many times have you found yourself accepting rules, obligations, or even opinions that don't reflect who you truly are? This creates a feeling of immense emptiness because no matter how hard you try, it's never enough. There will always be someone wanting more, demanding more, and demanding more. And in the process, you lose yourself. Authenticity dies, suffocated by the fear of displeasing. But when you learn to say no, when you understand that you don't need to be everywhere or respond to every call, a liberating feeling arises within you, that you owe nothing to anyone other than to live according to your own truth. And here's the most beautiful part. Authenticity attracts. When you truly show yourself, without masks, without bowing to external pressures, you begin to attract people who connect with your essence. It's curious because you may even lose some relationships, but what remains is much more valuable. These are people who respect you, who understand your limits, who know that your presence isn't guaranteed, but when it's there, it's genuine. This applies to friendships, romantic relationships, and even work. Authenticity bothers those who live by appearances, but inspires those who seek to live more honestly with themselves. Now I want you to do a quick exercise. Think of someone you deeply admire, someone who conveys truth in every action. Is this person always trying to please everyone? Is he always available to anyone? Probably not. And that's precisely why he or she is admired. Because being authentic requires courage. It requires a willingness to embrace your own choices. This is what makes you stand out in a world where most people are trying to fit in. And tell me one thing, have you ever felt this need to free yourself from external pressures to live your own way? If so, comment below with the word true. This simple gesture will mark your decision to walk towards a more authentic life and will also show others that they are not alone in this quest. Now keep this in mind. When you choose freedom and authenticity, everything around you begins to reorganize itself. But what really happens when you make this decision and begin living in accordance with your own essence? The next point will show you how this transformation not only changes the way others see you, but also changes the course of your entire life. Have you ever noticed how difficult it is to feel satisfied with superficial relationships? You talk, laugh, spend time, but when you get home, you're left with that empty feeling, as if nothing really happened. This happens because, deep down, you weren't born for shallow relationships. When you begin to free yourself from other people's expectations and choose to live authentically, you automatically begin to seek connections that have more meaning, that nourish your soul rather than just fill time. And it's at this moment that you discover one of the greatest truths. The chosen ones, those who choose to live according to their essence, cannot be content with friendships and relationships that lack depth. Superficial connections may distract you for a moment, but they don't sustain your energy. You need something more real, more genuine. People who understand you without you having to explain everything, who know how to respect your silences, who don't mind when you disappear for a while to reconnect with yourself. These are the relationships that strengthen you, that make you feel worth sharing your life with. And curiously, when you make it clear that you're no longer available for any kind of connection, life automatically begins to filter who stays and who leaves. At first, it may feel like you're losing a lot of people, but the truth is, you're making room for real people to come in. Alan Watts once said that life gains meaning when we stop chasing what's shallow and open ourselves to what's deep. It's at this point that you realize you don't need hundreds of friends to be happy, nor a huge social circle to feel accepted. You just need a few people, but they truly see you. And this shift is so powerful that even your conversations transform. They stop being about trivialities and become about growth, about purpose, about things that touch your heart. Now you've realized how this content opened your eyes to something you might not have seen so clearly before. Understanding that being less available changes everything about how people treat you has already begun to transform the way you see yourself and your relationships, and it's precisely because this resonated with you that it's worth sharing this truth. By liking and subscribing to the channel, you're spreading this transformation to others who also need to hear it. Today, write your thoughts in the comments below. Change, because it represents exactly what you've started experiencing from now on. And stay tuned, because the next video will take this reflection to an even deeper level, a level that will show you something that can completely change the course of your life.